right, hello and welcome to another expert interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Capperella. Hey Joe, how you doing?
John, I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. And Joel is an expert in marketing, so I thought it was a great idea to get him onto these series that we're doing on sales and marketing alignment. Just to dive right in and get started, I mentioned this to another guest recently about, it's 2017 and why are we still talking about sales and marketing alignment? And probably one of the reasons is that if we just take it from a marketing point of view right now, is that maybe marketing people don't always understand or know how to engage well with sales. So
Yeah.
what do you think about that, Joel?
Yeah, John, I'll tell you just from personal experience, I've been in marketing most of my career. I can honestly say without hesitation that I did not truly understand selling until I was out on my own and I had to do it a little bit myself, right? So I think the first and foremost, I think just appreciating, and you and I have had this discussion before, I think that the sales role is truly the only entrepreneurial role and spirit at an organization. And you guys believe that at SalesPOP and Pipeline, and I certainly do, because they're the only ones in the organization that have to perform immediately, or else their jobs aren't long for this world, right? So that level of pressure is mitigated, I think, by many marketing professionals. And also, I think the biggest thing is that marketing doesn't realize that the absolute best qualified lead in the world is not yet into the sales pipeline. And that's just a fact, right? So no matter how well qualified it is, once it gets handed over to sales, I mean, that's where the challenge for the sales pro begins. So I think, that closing that gap between when it leaves the marketing funnel and into the sales pipeline is critical. So understanding the way sales goes about doing their jobs, the pressure they're under, how they retire quota, how they prospect. I think how they prospect is probably the biggest thing. And then what are the things that they always rely on to get a deal further in the sales pipeline? And what are the questions that they ask? What's the information they need to know, and on and on. I think if we truly understood those things and marketing had a deeper appreciation from them, we're better able to serve our marketing brethren.
Yeah, so it seems to me that perhaps one of the things that marketing could look at doing is actually engaging with sales more and really understanding what a sales cycle looks like, because traditionally, I mean, they have been so kind of separated, and they operate, your marketing operates, and they kind of run up to the wall and then they throw it over the wall and they run back to gather something else to throw over the wall. With changes in buyer behavior and all of that, I think it's probably incumbent on marketing people now to because they have to go maybe a little further into what was traditionally the sales cycle, but really to understand more. So what are some of the ways you think, and maybe in some of the work you've done, how organizations can facilitate this greater level of understanding?
Well, customer knowledge, right? Every client, John, and this has been no exception to what I'm about to say. I help clients tell a bigger story to do three things: gain more awareness, drive deals into the pipeline, and help them get through the pipeline more quickly, right? Every time I show up at a client, they think they know their customer really well. About usually 2 weeks into the engagement, I'm hard pressed to find anyone in the organization that doesn't see the customer through the lens of their company. That's just across the board. I mean, every single client believes they know the customer. And listen, I think there's a good reason for that, because we have to run our business. We have to sell our products or services. We have to make sure that we're listening to our customers and adjusting our product or service. But we get caught in this cycle of serving the immediate need for the customer. And when that happens, we're not able to look 3-4 steps beyond why they even need our products and our services. So what ends up happening is instead of serving their future, we're serving kind of their past, if you will. So the first thing, I think, the order of business is marketing needs to talk to customers all the time. All the time. They need to understand them. They need to know them better than the sales guy does. And that's a challenge, right? Because sales is constantly talking to them. But I think marketing actually has a little bit more flexibility, because they don't have the necessity of closing the deal and retiring quota. That they don't own that. So therefore, they could be a little bit more flexible on how they know the customer. So I think that is probably, without a doubt, the first step in serving sales better.
Yeah, I really like that idea. But it's also a challenging one, isn't it, for a lot of
Mm,
organizations? Because, like you say, the salespeople have the relationship with the customer,
mm,
and then if you get marketing involved, sometimes salespeople will be like, "Whoa, what are you going to say? What are you going to talk to them about?" Or it's like kind of like they're quiet.
absolutely.
They're quiet right now, and they seem happy. I don't want to rock the
Yeah,
boat
don't
by
disrupt anything, right? Yeah.
don't disrupt
Yeah.
anything. So that's an interesting challenge. Um, what do you think are some of the things that a modern marketing organization, what are some of the skills that they need that perhaps they didn't need so much of maybe 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's it. Look, I love that question, John. You're always so on top of some of the things that need to be sorted out in this very area because I just wrote a blog post about this today that I'll post later this week. And I think strategy has left the marketing department, and I don't think it's found a home. I think that's
Mm.
probably so the strategic nuance of how we not only how we develop and build our products and services, but being very discreet with who we're going to focus on and then aggressively marketing to that group so we don't wander too much or we don't so not to suggest that we don't take opportunistic
Sure.
opportunities, but if we're focused very discreetly, because what I've seen happen across marketing organizations is it's filled with tactics of advertising, of social media management, of demand generation. And those things in and of themselves are all good. The idea and the concept of a go to market strategy that drives the tactical execution is really kind of absent. And I think my personal feeling is that I think that marketing automation is kind of allowed this to happen because we've become so focused on metrics. And again, not to suggest that the
Hmm.
metrics don't matter, they do, but we start to serve the metrics a little bit and we miss that challenging area of the marketing to sales transition. And then most importantly, driving that deal deeper into the sales pipeline. So, and I think if we're a little bit more strategic in our approach, what does that do? That forces us to be out ahead of our customers. So we're being more prescriptive with what they should do. Now, the pain solution value is, all well and good, but look, it's 2017. We've been doing that for over 17 years. The pain,
Right.
and guess what? Everybody does it.
Hmm.
So if you're just showing up with, oh, here's your pains and here's the solution, here's the value, the five other vendors in the deal are saying the same thing. But what five other vendors are not saying is, why does it matter? Why does freeing up this capital matter to you? What are the things you're going to be able to enable if you're able to free that capital up? If you're able to free that capital up, what does it mean to your workforce, to your customers' lives, et cetera, and so on? If we're being, and oh, by the way, here are the three things you're not even considering that are eventually going to impact
Hmm.
your expense and your budgets. If we're able to show up with that level of wisdom with our customers, now, I know, by the way, part and parcel to that is we have to have been answering their questions all along because they're doing the research before they even engage us. But once they do engage us, if we're able to take that very aggressively prescriptive approach, we put ourselves in a pretty good spot. So I think what are the skill sets that are needed? We need some of that strategic application against the tactics.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, unfortunately, because there's so many tools
Mm,
and you know all these things that have crept into it, and particularly I think the whole concept around inbound. Now we do inbound, and inbound has a large role to play in marketing, but it's not the be all and end all of everything.
sure.
And I think over the last while we've gotten a little spoiled, and people have expected to be able to magically do these things, and the
Yeah.
floods come in, which we know never happens. But I like your thoughts around the strategy, because I think if you go back to what we started talking about at the very beginning, is that if sales and marketing were building strategy together, or taking the strategy that's coming from the executive team and figuring out how to implement and target that, they'd be more aligned from the get-go, right?
Mm, for sure. For sure. I think that, I said earlier that strategy once upon a time, especially in technology and software, lived kind of in the marketing
Hmm.
group. John, here's an anecdotal story for you. I taught an MBA level course a couple years ago, and I told the group, it was probably 2010, more than a couple years ago, and I told the MBA candidates, listen, strategy resides somewhere. Your job is to kind of figure out where it lives. And marketing at the time had two kind of disciplines. One was much more strategic in nature.
Hmm.
One was more tactically focused. And again, I think the tactics have overtaken that strategy. But so who in the organization? And here's what happens, right? Another thing I see happen when we're putting our go-to-market strategy together. Sales has something to bring to the table there because they're the only ones that appreciates when the deal begins in the pipeline, what it actually looks like. And the beauty for the sales professionals, it's like the golf swing, right? If you
Hmm.
improve your swing and you're practicing the right mechanics, you're going to hit the ball farther, right?
Right.
Salespeople, I find the same thing. If they have the mechanics of their sales process down and their style and how they connect and engage and push things forward, they're going to sell more. So let's understand those mechanics in the context of where we're trying to develop our strategy, right? So I think when they come to the table on the go-to-market strategy development, that is what you and it's hard, right? So you
Sure.
have to moderate those things because sales sometimes wants to run off and suggest what the strategy should be.
Hmm.
But that's not, in my opinion, that's not their job, right? Their job is not to say, hey, we should go into this market. They should certainly contribute to the idea of what markets, but what they really are best at is understanding the mechanics of the deal, right? Especially for longer deal cycle. If it's transactional, it's a little bit different. Shopping cart type stuff, a little different. But I know you and I are looking mostly at longer
Hmm.
deal cycles. So I can bring those mechanics of the deal in to the go-to-market strategy. It really unleashes a lot of ideas and approaches that we could take to penetrate those marketplaces even more deeply.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think another thing that I think marketing need to consider is that you can go off and you can create your messaging and all of this in isolation, right? You can do that, that's fine. And then you can push it out to the sales organization. But
Mm,
the salespeople are the tip of the spear, right? They're the ones
of
who
course.
have the most close interaction with your prospects and customers. So if they aren't bought into the message or they don't understand the message, they're going to interpret it, right?
Yep.
So going back
Yep.
to your idea of your go-to-market strategy, it's all very well putting your go-to-market strategy together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you have 10 salespeople and they interpret it in 10 different ways, what are you
Yes.
saying to the market?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think you're absolutely right about that because another big challenge, I talked about the challenge when I first start with a client. Another thing that we run into a challenge, and it happens every time again, is when we start to craft the story. Hey, here's the story of why we even matter in the marketplace and what we're trying to accomplish, right? And it feels uncomfortable, especially to the salespeople at first, because they're so used to selling to the IT guy and what his needs are, or
Mm-hmm.
selling to the financial director, or the CFO, and what they're trying to do. So they're unaccustomed to speaking beyond the box of the solution, right? So I think you're right in saying that if your sales team doesn't adopt the strategy and the message, it doesn't go very far. I think you could not be more correct in that statement. So therefore, what do? I think here's where the tactics do matter.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, as a marketing professional, you have to boil down that strategic high level to very discrete tactics. So for instance, I'm a big fan of like email sequencing, okay? Every good sales guy is prospecting in person at networking events on the phone, and they're sending email sequences to follow up. Make the email sequencing a no-brainer for your sales professional by injecting, and first of all, keep them brief, right?
Right.
I would say no more than 100 words tops. That's even a long one. I'd say 50 words if you can. Add a link to content that's relevant about whatever is happening in the industry or that forward thinking that you're suggesting. And then every fifth one or so, you hit them up with some kind of ask, right? That is a way for a salesperson to keep those cold prospects kind of present to them, right? And again, every good sales guy knows that over time, a couple of those bubble up. So you see what we're doing here is you're taking that strategic level
Mm-hmm.
and you're bringing it down to a very visceral tactic, right? And it's almost, you don't have to think about it. You just, send it. And inherently, because you've served the salesperson in that way, they're naturally adopting to the messaging because you're removing all the guesswork out of it for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic approach because under that model, you really are starting to contribute value on behalf of,
Mm,
to the salesperson. So therefore, the salesperson is seeing you more as a partner, as a support, rather than just them over in
yeah.
marketing who send us these crappy leads that never
Yeah,
come through.
yeah. And look, and it's important for marketing to understand is email sequencing in sales is not the same as lead nurturing.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of sales professionals don't get that. Like a salesperson doesn't want to send campaigns. They want to target John and they know his kids and they want to customize it a little bit. So
Sure.
they know, like I'll say they know his wife's expecting and they know the date. So they want an email that they'll send. They could schedule it even because they know about the date and they could also add some kind of link or copy that some way, shape, or form relative to what they've been discussing all along. See, that's completely different than a campaign. And that's another thing I think sales marketing professionals, fail to appreciate that at that level, at the prospecting level, it becomes a very personal
Hmm.
management of your network.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that you've seen when you do work with organizations where you've seen really good alignment and interaction between sales and marketing? And what are some of the tactics or that they use?
Yeah, it's funny because I see bad alignment more often than I see good alignment. I'm not going to kid you. I think it's a humility game for marketing, especially, right? Marketing can't feel ownership over it, right? If you the best well-aligned marketing and sales organizations have been one where your marketing team has been incredibly humble about how willing they are to serve sales, right? So it's they might bite their tongues a lot because sales is being unreasonable in the things that they're asking, but they find a way to truly listen to the needs of their sales team and then adjust it accordingly, right? So that they could stay true to the strategic nature of the message and what they're trying to penetrate in the marketplaces they're trying to go into, but align it to the specific needs of the salesperson. And ultimately, I think the best marketing teams involve as many people in the company as possible, right? And there's two types of marketing organizations. One that owns everything
Mhm.
and they produce all the content and that they outsource writing, maybe they have some internal design. It's
Right.
all kind of sterile, right? The best marketing teams are like, I think you guys actually do a great job of, right? I have Martha, I think, hits me up every now and again and asks me if I want to write. You
Mhm.
invite me to things like this, and you're involved in getting more contributors to the narrative and the message, and that keeps the message at a very high level. It keeps it more pure. It keeps it more less salesy in marketing. So I think the best marketing teams out there involve the sales team in the content production, in structuring the lead offers so they actually resonate, in getting feedback for what the early presentation, how it went off or how it was received, and addressing and adjusting things with that feedback.
Yeah, no, I think that those are great points. And I do think you're right. At the end of the day, you're going to have this continuing standoff between sales and marketing. And I think it's in some ways, I'm sorry for marketing folks, but in some ways it's kind of up to you to make the move because,
Absolutely.
sales tend to be, as we said, they're the tip of the spear, tend to be very caught up in a lot of things. And but if you reach out to them, they'll react really well. But I think in many ways, you kind of have to make marketing kind of has to make the first move.
I completely agree. And I think, and here, look, the sales guy giving marketing some advice. Let a marketing guy give some sales guys
Mhm.
advice, right? When marketing does reach out, you need to make it a priority to listen, right?
Yeah.
And they might make a mistake or two. You need to afford them the opportunity to make those mistakes so that you will get together and move things forward in the future. Being protective of your customers, I get it. I completely get it. Okay. But the company as a whole is not going to do the things that it needs to do unless you have a deep appreciation for the customer. No, guess what? You're the one who owns the customer. So you have to share those
Hmm.
relationships. So you're a relationship builder if you're a good sales professional. So factor in that ask from the marketing team that helps educate them a little bit better about what customers actually care about.
Yeah. And from a sales point of view, I mean, it makes sense if you build a relationship with people in marketing who are going to help you. I mean, that's just makes sense, right? The better
Absolutely.
relationship you have, the more likely they're going to help you and the more likely they're going to listen to your input, right?
I completely agree.
Okay, so listen, we're bumping up against the end of our time here. It's been a great chat, Joel. Just in the last couple of moments, can you just share with the viewers a little bit more about you, what you do, and how they can contact you?
Sure. No, absolutely, John. I'd be happy to. Again, I do something very simple. It's to help companies and my clients tell a much grander story, right? And it does three things. It drives much more awareness for organizations. It gets more leads out of the marketing funnel into the sales pipeline, and it accelerates those leads to a faster close. So it's right for companies that have a sales cycle that's, say, 6 weeks longer. It does much better in technically oriented type of disciplines like software and technically oriented professional services. And look, I'm always willing to chat about it, to evaluate what you've got going on, and let you know if you even have some easy wins that you don't need my help for, but you could make immediate adjustments and gain big wins. So if you're using marketing automation and it's really tactical, and if you're a sales professional that just isn't getting the kind of help that we're discussing right here,
Mhm.
that's a good sign that we should talk. And you can find me at joelcaparella.com.
Excellent. All right. Listen, thanks, Joel. Again, my name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. I'll see you all for another expert interview really soon.
Thanks, John.